What is a small transformation or promise that you can make that's going to change their world?
You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 297. And today I've got a special guest joining me to talk about how to make your first 100K in business. Are you ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, entrepreneurs and business leaders. It is your host, Melanie Benson. And today I've got a special guest joining us. We're going to be talking to the members of our audience who are ready to take that big leap in business and make their first 100K. Or if you have pivoted your business to add coaching and consulting or training or any of the services, and this is a new part of your offerings, this is going to be really helpful for you as well. You can always tune in and pick up a few pointers no matter what stage of your business that you're in right now. Now, speaking of different stages of being in business, before I introduce my guest, I want to just remind you about a resource that's available to you here. It's my 7-step framework to get booked, get leads, and get clients and add another 6 figures this year. This is the framework I use over and over and over again to leverage other people's audiences, whether that's podcasts or virtual stages or collaborations, whatever that arrangement is, and turn it into a win-win opportunity for everybody to grow together. So I love this framework. Once you get all the pieces together, it's like a well-oiled machine that just helps you attract great leads and bring the revenues up in your business doing what you love, which is hopefully your superpower. So if you head to amplifywithmelanie.com, I will give you access to this framework. And I'd love to hear if you're putting it into action, what step you're focused on right now. Okay. You can just hit me up in the DMs if you're listening to this on social, or shoot me a DM wherever you are listening to this. I would love to hear it. Now let's introduce today's guest. Welcome back, Amplifiers. I am so excited to talk to you with my special guest on making your first 100K. Even if you're brand new and you've never sold anything. Well, let me introduce you to James Lamb. He's the owner of Lamb Look Ahead Marketing. Great acronym there. He helps heart-centered entrepreneurs discover their superpowers and then use those gifts to shape their businesses into change-making enterprises via his 12-week signature program, Superpowered Business Success. James also built the successful franchise Learn Photography Company with over 5,000 students at 10 studios across Canada. We're in for a power pack conversation today. James, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Melanie. It's great to be here.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. So looking forward to digging into your very powerful brain and seeing what we can to help people who, especially at the beginning stages. But let's just set some context here. If somebody's been at this a while and hasn't really been making that 6-figure mark, this would be very relevant for them as well. Maybe they made some mistakes along the way. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. So some of what's interesting. So we've had a few hundred people go through Superpowered Business Success, which you frame really nicely. And I'm going to tell you the answer before you ask the question. The answer is we figure out your message, we figure out your marketing, and then we get you to launch some kind of pilot, some kind of beta to the tune of thousands of dollars. Now, most people, when I speak about it in the beginning, they talk about, oh, it's great for new people and it's great for people who are just getting in the business. The honest to goodness truth, it is great for people who haven't figured out how to monetize on a regular basis. And we show them the steps on how to get there. Because it's not just what you know, it's also what you don't know and the powerful steps that you need to take to be able to monetize.
I'm so glad you framed that way, because we know a lot of people are not quite able to monetize their superpower yet. And speaking of that, let's get everybody on the same page here. how do we know what our superpower is? Because I think a lot of people sometimes aren't 100% sure, or they think they have 1,000 of them.
Well, that's one of the challenges, right? And so this is common wisdom, is if you were an engineer for a engineering firm and you went on and started your own business, what do most engineers start their business in? Engineering, right? They're like, I've
Right.
done this all my life and I'm going to do it again. And yes, most people are competent and they're better engineers than I am. And what we need to do is figure out what the transformation or the promise that you can achieve that is better than anybody else. That's really the center plank of everything that we do here. And I know you can't see this. Melanie's sitting here nodding at me because she agrees with me, and I know that. And so one of the very first things we do in Superpowered Business Success, or a number of my one-to-one clients, or even in a really great conversation with some people who I love, is we figure out what the program is that you can create, or the service that you create that is unique to you, that is better than anybody else, because you will have a perspective and you will have an experience, something that absolutely nobody else can match.
True. Yeah. And sometimes people think, well, how am I all that unique and different from somebody else that has similar things? Trust me. Like when you really dig into your superpower and you understand what powers you and what really does make you unique, it's quite obvious, but maybe you need to look at it through a new lens and ask different questions. And I
Yes.
know that's part of what you do with people.
Well, one of the interesting things is and I just, so I have a lot of energy healers that come through my program.
Hmm.
Okay. And it's one of the it's the thing that how do I say this? So because there's so many, and we need all the energy healers in the world. I'm just going to say that straight up. You have an amazing gift. You have an amazing ability to heal people and break through their blocks and old programming. One of the challenges is, how do you become unique as an energy healer? And what I see more often than not is people coming up with programs and services, and they're all based on what other energy healers are doing. And the honest to goodness truth is, you've had different experiences to bring you to the spot. More than likely, you will have suffered some type of trauma, and that's the reason why you were healed through energy. And chances are you will have, that's the reason that inspired you to do what you do. So channel that. Use that. Don't do what everybody else does. Use that. That's a great example of how we can stand a little bit differently from the crowd.
Hmm. So we're talking about creating this signature program. And I think sometimes people have been hearing messages out there in the world that, you're just going to um, turn it around in 5 days, or you're going to, just like throw something out there on a Google Doc and you're going to be all set to go. Like, I know there's some steps involved to creating a program that's going to sell well. It's going to be irresistible. It's going to help you make over six figures. What are some of the steps involved in this?
So it's quite a process, as you already know, Melanie. Part of the challenge is understanding the foundation. So I actually, when I learned we were going to do this podcast, and I got really excited, and I actually wrote them down in 6 steps, which is funny because for someone who's done this for a number of people, I have never actually written it down into 6 steps. So I'd love to go through the steps. A big part of what you're talking about is understanding the foundation. Now, I want to talk about the first 2 steps because they are so fundamental in everything that we do. Like you said, most people start with some type of Google Note or Evernote or whatever it is, and they write down, this is what I'm going to do. And they go and do all the activities and try to market this thing. And they're like, why isn't it working? And it's fundamentally because the foundations aren't there. So I'm going to reveal what step 1 and 2 are, and then maybe we can dig into them a little bit. Okay. Step 1, we've alluded to a little bit, is the transformation or the promise. What is the service promise or the program promise? How can you deliver it? Why are you better than anybody else? It does not need to be like every other program out there. It does not need to be competing against something that's unique to you. What could that be? The second one is one of the things that I personally love to do with my people, is what's called story arcing. Story arcing to me is the way towards online coaching, healing course creator abundance. It's the ability to see like the 50,000 foot view. What is going to be, how are we going to cultivate these people? What are we going to talk about? How are they going to buy? What's the first thing they purchase? And then how do we continue to serve them in a meaningful and an abundant manner so we get paid exactly what we're worth as well? So those are the 2 really great first 2 fundamental steps.
Okay, I'm glad you covered them because those foundations are really key. And I want to go back to step one, which is so important because I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the feature versus really understanding the transformation and what's going to be different. And then they try to sell the feature, and that's why it doesn't work. Not
Mhm.
that I ever made that mistake like 50 times in the beginning, right? But I think there's a really important shift that especially people who are more like they're so passion driven about what they do, they
Yes.
don't really know those distinctions. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is they see what everybody else is doing and they feel like they have to be like everybody else.
Mm.
Transformations do not need to be fixed. I'm gonna give you an example. Okay, we had somebody who came in and she was a life coach and she was really struggling along, and she's kind of saying, well, I don't really know, because after they leave they have more energy and more time and more family, and like it's all important, and more is not a transformation,
Yes.
right? So if
Yes.
you have more, this is not a transformation. I'm sorry, and it's not. And some of you are going to turn off this podcast, and that's okay, right? So more is not transformation. Now, what we realized, we asked her the question, simple question. It was this: what are you better at than anybody else that you know? And the answer was, I wrap Christmas presents better than anybody else.
Hmm.
Great. Have you ever thought about doing a Christmas wrapping present program? Oh, no, there's no money in it. There's so much money in doing that, right? There's so much money in getting something that people actually want. This is a crazy thing, and it's right up her alley, and she loves doing it. And we're gonna see what's gonna happen because she hasn't launched it yet, but we just came up with this a couple of weeks ago. But the point is that, sometimes when we struggle and be different, I'm not saying you have to create something completely different, but this is a transformation. This is something that's unique. And when we talk about from the premise of what are you better at than anybody else, that is a great starting point. Most people, and this is a mistake that most people make. You ready for this? Most people try to deliver way too much value in the first product. What are you selling? I'm going to save the world and have world peace, and there's going to be no more famine and no more war. Like there's too many things that we try to do in the beginning. What is a small transformation or promise that you can make that's going to change their world? Maybe you work with professional mothers, professional women who happen to be mothers at the same time. And I see this, I hear this all the time from my people. Mothers sacrifice themselves, and they support everybody else first, and they have no time remaining for themselves. Maybe the transformation is just this: get them through so they understand that they are the priority, and then have them take steps to go for the promotion that they've always wanted, that they deserve for the past 6 years. Maybe that's a transformation, and for them, that is a world-changing transformation.
Mm, very powerful. I just got really curious about something as you were talking, and I was thinking back to all these newer coaches and people who hadn't quite figured it all out yet, and conversations I was having with them. And I'm wondering, do you think on some level that sometimes people really have a hard time owning the transformation they create for others? It's almost like it's such a big responsibility. Do you ever stumble into that with people?
I do, and it manifests in different ways.
Yes.
Most of the time it manifests. So here's an interesting thing. I actually had a discussion with one of my really good friends and mastermind people as well. And one of the things that prevents us from being great is having this weight of the expectation of, oh my God, now I need to make them a millionaire. Oh my God, now I need to make sure they do this. And the goal here is to have programs that are not just powerful and move them. And there's a third plank that people have to understand, is that the people who buy your services, the people who buy your course, the people who buy your products need to take action themselves. We can only do so much. And what is heroic is throwing everything that we have into these things so they get the best results. I'm going to be perfectly upfront, okay? We talked about superpower to business success, right? Last time we ran it, great program, transformational program for those people who take advantage of it. We had 40 people come in, an amazing program. 40 people came in, half of them monetized. Half of them came out with $2,500 or more out by week 12. I lead them by hand. I show people, I'm like, this is how we do it. This is how you make the ask. This is how you write down a list of people who will probably say yes. This is how you do this, right? And it's a step by step by step by step. The people so half of them monetize. Why did the other half not monetize? Is it because they're bad people? No, it's because they have to take the steps themselves. So there's two things. Number one is throw everything you have at it. Number two, remove the expectation that you can help every single person, because you can't. The only thing we can do is throw everything we have at it and do our best.
Yep. Well said. Well, we talked about your first two steps. I know there's 6 total. Let's talk about the next 2.
Okay. The next two are, I put them together, is getting leads and starting to cultivate them. So, one of the things I see all the time is I have people who come to my program with tiny lists. Like we're talking about 8 people, 10 people, 1 person sometimes. And one of the things we have to start doing right away is getting people on our list. Now, it does not need to be expensive. You do not need to run $5,000 of Facebook ads. Most of the strategies that I share in there are free. I'm going to give you an example. We can do list swaps. We can do joint ventures. We can do summits, which are fundamentally free. We can do giveaways, which are fundamentally pretty much free, depending on how many people you get, right? There's so many ways that we can build our list for not a lot of money, and we start talking to them about what we do. Here's the honest to goodness truth, okay? Is that I had someone who at the end, I didn't know how this was going to go. Week 5, she had 5 people on her list. I'm like, well, it's a good start. We need to do more. By the end, she had her first group program running to the tune of $6,000 with 12 people in it. So
wow.
we do not need a ton of people. We do not need a ton of time leading up to it. Does that make sense? So that's really step 3. Step 4 is asking people to join us and help shape what we do. And I know we recently, Melanie, had somebody coming on, but I'm going to tell you this, it's a little bit different. It's not a come buy my program. It's, look, I have an idea and I'd love to share this with you. And I'd love feedback. Would you be willing to support me? That's how we do it. Step 5, taking those people, moving them to a bigger product, right? 1-to-1 mastermind membership. And then step 6, preparing to do it all over again, but in a launch format. So fundamentally, what we're doing with the first 3 things, which are, again, get your message right. Number 2, figure out your story arc. Number 3, start getting leads and start cultivating. We build the foundation for everything you need for 100K. It sounds ridiculous, and it's so simple, and it's so effective. And I've seen it time and time and time over and over again.
Yeah. As you're laying that out, like I'm also thinking, a lot of people try to do this on their own and they kind of like make some pretty common mistakes. Like, where do you see people make the common mistakes that derail this process and keeps them from being able to get those 6-figure years that everybody's kind of pining for? I shouldn't say everybody. I know a lot of people aren't driven by the money, but let's just say it's very doable.
It is very doable. And Melanie, I think, well, you're definitely proof of it. I'm proof of it. I did it in about 12 months. Okay. So there's 2 big things that hold people back. Number 1, doing the wrong things. The stuff I laid out is not complicated, and you're going to be amazed by how simple it really is. People get confused because they listen to this person, they listen to this free podcast, they join this other program, and they end up doing things that quite honestly don't really work. Sometimes they're damn doing the busy work for everybody else. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is finding the courage to really up level. Entrepreneurship is not an easy process. Success is not an easy process. If you think it is, get it out of your mind, because it isn't, right? Success is constantly reinventing yourself for the betterment of you, right? It's constantly, trying things that might fail. Who knows? You're going to run a 3-day event. It might fail. You're going to run a conversion event, whether it's a 5-day challenge or webinar or workshop. It might fail. The very first time you make an ask, it might fail. Some people are so controlled by the fear that they never end up moving ahead. And that's one of the fundamental things that I'm going to tell you straight up. Like I can talk strategy all day. I love talking strategy. It's my sweet spot. Realistically, in my masterminds, 80% of our content is about emotion courage. What is it going to take to get you to the next step?
Yeah. I'm so glad you talked about the fear, because as soon as you said that word, quite a few people's like faces popped up in my head where I watched them. Like they just talk themselves out of doing the thing that would move the needle because the fear gets so big. And fear is natural, but we don't have to let the fear decide. We can go, okay, yeah, that's a little crunchy. It feels scary for me, but I'm still going to do what works. And I think recognizing where fear takes us out of the process that works is really important skill set.
Well, that's also the benefit of having someone like you, Melanie, having someone like me, having a community to help support you, is it gets you out of that fear mentality. Because I'm going to tell you this much: when you are by yourself, no, okay, personal opinion, I don't think anybody can do this on their own. I really don't. I really don't. Because you are going to be controlled by that fear. The thing you were programmed is the cave person worry. Oh my God, we don't have water. We need to find water. That made sense back that long ago, right? Nowadays, though, that fear, it holds us back from becoming the great people that we are.
Yeah, well said. I want to bring up something that I think is a kind of another, I don't want to say it's a mistake, but I think it's becomes a bit of a mindset block or a limiting belief for people when they're trying to first move a new program out in the world. And I've seen a lot of people get stuck around, well, I don't have any testimonials, or I don't have any social proof yet. I don't feel like have my credibility in place to, you know, sell this, because maybe they haven't done it in that form before. How do you help people overcome that particular block?
Okay, there's a couple things. So number one is, you remember the 6-step process that I talked about. That's really number 4. That's making the ask in such a way where you don't need testimonial. Because I'm saying, hey, Melanie, I have a crazy idea, and I'm going to charge you to participate in this crazy idea, and I think you should come along because it'd be a ton of fun. You're like, James Lamb, I am in, right? Is number one. So that's how we get out of a lot of that in the testimonial form. Okay. The other thing that I see more often than not, and I think this goes back to the psychological thing, is I find these things are handy excuses to not be the people who we are. And I might be triggering some people, which is the truth. Okay. We always say you should have testimonials. Should you have a testimony? Yes, absolutely. You should absolutely have testimonials. And are they going to make or break a sale? Probably not at the end of the day. Does that make sense? So part of the design, so basically I'm saying it 2 ways. Number one is part of the design of running some kind of pilot, beta for not a lot of money. You have to have paying people that have to pay. I'm going to tell you that straight out. Don't do it on a free run, okay? Is they need to give you testimonials. And if you don't have testimonials, don't let it stop you from becoming the amazing person that you can be.
Yeah. Sometimes it's about what you've been able to accomplish. And when you've been able to accomplish something, you're demonstrating social proof. It's just the social proof comes as you keep showing that to more people. That's what I did when I got off the ground, James. In the very beginning, I had done something, and then everybody wanted to know how I did it. And so my proof was, well, if I can do it, you can do it. And sometimes I know that's not your process exactly, but if that's where you are, start there.
Well, that's how I got to where I am, right? Is kind of fail your way forward until you find something that works and it's going to work. Does that make sense?
Yes, completely. I've had my share of those. And we find a lot of things that don't work, and then we find the one thing that does, and then we should be amplifying the power of that by sharing with other people how to make that work in their business or in their life, whatever that is.
Well, this is what it is, right? Is kind of listen to Melanie, listen to myself. If we can help a few people avoid the same pitfalls that you and I have both spent time and energy and lots of money in, then that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Avoidance of pain is a very powerful motivator for many of us, which is why I think coaching is such a powerful industry, is because we're either helping people accelerate a path to what we want, or we're helping people avoid challenges and breakdowns and stuck points that can take years to figure out on your own, as you said before. So James, if somebody wants to accelerate this process for themselves and they'd like to get more from you, what's a good place for them to start with you?
One of the things I'm gonna give, we always have some kind of amazing freebie, which is the truth, right? Right now we have three. I just created this the other day, so this is really cool. So this is brand new off the press. Okay, so it's 3 covert strategies to make big money from small lists, and is targeted towards online coaches, online healers, and course creators. And it's fundamentally what I'm talking about right now, which is what are some strategies to get you where you need to go that are pragmatic, that are not difficult, that you can implement right away, that don't cost any money.
Okay? Nice. I like it.
So you go to lookahead.com/marketing.com/freebie, and it's going to be there.
I like it. Sounds perfect. Okay, so this is my moment in the conversation where I like to take us a little behind the scenes and get to know James on a little bit more of the personal level. You've been in business and you figured out a lot of stuff, as you alluded to. You've made a lot of failures along the way. What would you say is the one thing you wish you would have learned sooner?
Trust myself. This is what I see more than anybody else, and Melanie, I think you understand what I'm saying here. So when we first start, this is the truth. We did a long time ago. We spent about $3,000 doing Facebook ads, and we got a bunch of things, and we did a webinar, and I had looked at Amy Porterfield's webinar format, and I had looked at Russell Brunson's webinar format, and I, instead of being myself, I try to become them. I could hear it in my voice. I could hear it in what I say, and I went through all of these things, and at the end of the day, I just needed to trust my intuition, trust the person who I am, because they're not buying Amy Porterfield or Russell Brunson through me. They're buying me. And that was a very expensive mistake that I wish I had done that. So if you find yourself, and I'm going through a couple of things with some mastermind people right now. Oh, I thought so-and-so said you had to do this. Oh, so-and-so said you had to do this. Just get it done the best way that you can. Trust yourself that it's going to work. Trust yourself that you know how to do this, because you are the product, my friends. The best version of you. What does that look like?
Yeah, as you're telling that story, I was remembering a time when I was taking speaker training, and I was getting on these stages and getting so messed up in my head, like how to be the superpower of me and incorporate the training. And it was like not working. And I felt like everything was just a mess. And it wasn't until I just kind of I let some of that fall away, picked up a little bit of the energy of it, but I just found my superpower from stage that everything just took off. And I think just trusting that, you got to trust you. You got to trust your superpowers.
When you allow yourself to be, when you give permission to be yourself, and it is a permission thing, when you give yourself permission to be yourself, that is when all the magic happens.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about superpowers today. And so my last question for you that made me super curious is, what is your superpower?
Ooh. Good question, and it has changed many times. Right now, I think it's inspiration. One of the things that I am able to do more than anything else is help people believe that they can do this. We have a number of people, like there are defining marks in entrepreneurship, especially online coaching, healing, and course creation. Okay. One of the first hallmarks is getting that first group program for the tune of $5,000 or $6,000. And it's this thing that all people have to go through. And yet I think if I were to do a proportion, 99% of people will never make it. Okay. There's a small subset that will rise above. And I have 3 people making their ask today, and they are dead scared. And I can honestly say, without my help and without the community, they wouldn't be doing it. So I think that's what I have people doing, is inspiring them to do things that are really difficult and really scary.
Well said. I love it. That's a powerful superpower to have. Very contagious or compelling. Maybe not contagious, compelling.
Well, hopefully compelling and contagious. It's a good contagion.
Yes. James, thank you so much for joining us today. You've brought some amazing brilliance, and I hope you will lean in and check out James's amazing resource, and tell us in the Amplify Your Success Facebook group what it is that you are going to lean into with your superpowers. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Melanie. It's been great to be here.
Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.